Hello there, and welcome to Theme Thursday here on Answer Everywhere. We'll be looking today at Sourcegraph, which is a code intelligence platform that runs in a web browser as opposed to an IDE. The past few weeks, we've been looking at LSP implementations, where LSP is a tool that lets you understand your code, uh, read in the code, creates a syntax tree out of it, lets you do things like search for identifiers and whatnot. And Sourcegraph is more or less the same thing, except it's running in a browser instead of an IDE. And they also have a lot of other bells and whistles that kind of go along with having a good browser-based developer experience. Now, we've seen a couple of web-based code search tools on here before. So I wanted to look at a couple of them just so we have a feeling about what Sourcegraph is up to. So one is SearchFox. This is the Codesearch tool for the Mozilla Firefox and related repositories, and we can do things like search for an identifier. Let's try window, and we're going to get files that match our search expression, and then we can click on them. And if we look at identifiers, then we get tooltips like we can search for the identifier, we can highlight it. If we find one in C, then we can click on imports, and there's whatever this is about generated code and that sort of thing. So the sort of stuff that you might be familiar with from your IDE or from a text editor. And then we also have some version control stuff here, like we can blame, and we hover over the gray bar to get blame information. So that's the Firefox one. The one I'm most familiar with is the internal one at Google. That one's not publicly available, but what is publicly available is kind of the Chromium version of or fork of the internal Codesearch. So Chromium, I think because it was open source before a lot of other Google tooling was, has a lot of sort of open source versions of internal things that are not quite the same as the originals. Usually they have fewer features and fewer resources are devoted to making them nice. But the Chromium code search is pretty nice. I think you can search for window here, just as we did in Firefox. We get a lot of the same sorts of features. We can look at symbols and click on them and go to their definitions. We can blame. Maybe we can blame somewhere that's going to take less long. Yeah, okay, so we get blame information. And in the blame information, you can go to the version in history. And down below, we have this history thingamajig. I don't know what you call this kind of UI element. And then we can also, for each line, we can look at references in the code, things that reference it. This particular line doesn't seem to have many references, but maybe we can look at point. We can see code that uses point. So this is, this actually might be, now that I think about it, this might actually be the internal code search. I'm not sure. But anyway, code search. So this is the sort of thing that Sourcegraph is doing. And to my eyes, Sourcegraph looks a lot like Codesearch. I don't know if they had former Googlers who work there, or if they somehow are familiar with it. But it also works a little bit like the SearchFox thing. So whatever this idea is, we've had different versions of it in the industry. And one of the things that Sourcegraph seems to be doing differently is instead of searching a single repo the way that Chromium searches the Chromium repo and SearchFox searches the Firefox repos, you seem to be able to pass in kind of any GitHub repo. I'm not sure if there are limitations of that, but presumably what it's going to do is in the background clone that repo and start indexing so that you can use the Sourcegraph tooling. Sourcegraph itself is hosted on GitHub, as you see here. and we can go to the Sourcegraph GitHub page. The one thing I'll mention is that Sourcegraph is not entirely open source. They're what's called open core. I think GitLab does essentially the same thing, but there will be directories that are called something something / enterprise, and the things in the enterprise directories are going to be pay features that enterprise customers would use, and those don't have an open source license. So we're not going to look at those files. They might show up if we do a search or something, but we're going to look at the open source code and kind of ignore the non-open source code. That being said, I imagine that since I'm looking at Sourcegraph on their own website, that they are going to have a bunch of the enterprise tools available, and so some of what we see here may not be what's available in the open source version. All right, so here's their. So we can see their file system layout. It seems to be mostly be written in Go, which I saw on GitHub. I don't know if there's something here that tells me that as well. And I don't know what compare is. I guess I can compare branches. Let's compare master with integration tests. So we get some. So this interface looks a bit like the coloring is very reminiscent of of Garrett, which we also saw here, which is a version of the internal code review tool at Google as well. Okay, so let's go back here. They have this thing that's called Cody, which is some AI assistant. I don't know if I'm allowed to use it, but I'll try to see what it does. I can say hi, Cody. I'll ask who let's see the Cody documentation. The chatbot that knows your code, and it claims it can fix up code. I wonder if this is based on ChatGPT. So I'll ask it, are you based on GPT? Okay. So they say that they're not based on GPT. All right. Cool. So let's look around the code. I think that, see, do we get a package directory? I think we have a Sourcegraph directory, right? Something. Source Tari, migrations monitoring, lib. Internal might be interesting. Lib might be interesting. Docker images, I'm not so sure. Am I in the Sourcegraph directory? Let's look at the GitHub version. Okay. This is the same as here. Cool. All right, what else do we have? We've got things like BuildKite, which would be a build tool. Client, I'm not so interested in. Command, I'm going to guess, is command line processing. Migrations is not so interesting. Source Tori. I guess I'll look at Source Tori. I don't know what's in it. UI should be like the web UI, I assume. And we've got some Nick stuff. We've got commit history. I'm going to ask Cody, what's the main Sourcegraph directory? You know, the one with the coolest source files. And I don't know, it doesn't seem to be putting the context here into the other tab. Main Sourcegraph directory is sourcegraph/sourcegraph. Couldn't I not find that? It contains the code for the Sourcegraph app, including the web app front end, the API and backend services, the code host integrations, the editor extensions, documentation, and more. I don't see this directory, but maybe I'm misunderstanding it. Let's try find. Is this the right syntax? Okay. I guess, what is it? I think this is what, type directory, type D. Okay, it isn't like that. Oh, I think I need to, something like this. Okay. So we have /enterprise/sourcegraph and some other sourcegraph stuff, but I don't think we have sourcegraph. Are you lying to me, Cody? Okay, the Cody's saying they don't have access to the workspace or okay, whatever. All right, thank you for your time, Cody. All right, I'm guessing they just mean sourcegraph/sourcegraph the repo. Unless there's like a source, I don't know. All right, we'll poke around. So in internal, we have actor, which is probably something related to the actor model. Admin analytics, which might be pretty cool. I'll move this to its own tab. API and audit. Auth and authz batches. Maybe batches, byte utils. Code intel, collections. Who knows what combi is? Cookie. I guess we'll ignore database. Device ID and disk cache, I guess I'll ignore. Download might be important because it seems like it's downloading some stuff. Endpoint, who knows? Event logger, I guess we'll ignore. Executor, I think I opened, but I didn't mean to. There's a Git server, which should be basically the thing that's serving Git. There's Go routines, which might be frequently reused Go routine libraries. There's gRPC, which might have some interesting like protos or something in it. There's an HTTP server. Instrumentation. Instrumentation might be good. Inventory might be good. Limiter. I think we can ignore that. Lua Sandbox. They're doing something with Lua, I guess. MapFS. I don't know what that is. I guess we'll open Lua Sandbox. Memo, I don't know what that's going to be. Observation and OOB migration. I'll ignore. Package filters. Profiler. PubSub. Rate limit. RBAC. I think we can ignore some. I guess they might use Redis. They have some Redis pool thing. Repos might be interesting. Search and searcher. And Slack is probably like Slack integration. SourceCli, that might be a command line tool. Something about Prometheus, tracing, TTL cache, TX email, I don't know. Types might be important. Unpack, upload handler, and related, I guess I'll ignore. Users might be interesting. VCS, it's probably version control system, right? Webhooks and stuff. And buff.yaml, I think there's some like proto buff tool that's called buff. And so I guess maybe before I look too much into these files, let's talk about what kind of what we expect to, how we expect it to work. So there's going to be something that has LSP-like functionality that's going to take a downloaded Git repo and do LSP type stuff and serve that stuff. And then that has to be integrated into the front end somehow. There, at least traditionally, there would be something like a database where you would in the create something like a tags file, which is a thing that people did before LSP, where you're basically taking identifiers and storing them with like an index for where they occur. And to support like nicer search, you might have something like a reverse index of that sort, where you're storing things like trigrams, like small snippets of a word, whatever the search resolution is, and enabling people to search for those. I know that Sourcegraph has features like what they call structural search, which allows you to let's see if we can test it. I don't remember. I think you could do like func something dot key. I don't know if this is going to work, but you have some way of like putting like holes or dots. Yeah, okay, here we go. We're getting all I guess all functions that take t something as a first argument, and so I'm not sure exactly what's going on here, but you might imagine that they have some definition of some syntax, and they have a way of compiling those what they call structural searches into regular expressions and do like a regular expression search. There's going to be support for that sort of thing. But I think that's mostly it. And then there's going to be a ton of like bells and whistles where it's going to be like IDE configurations or configurations for popular open source tooling or workflows, just things that you have to add when you're like a startup and somebody's like, oh, well, we use, Bandersnatch to manage our whatchamacallits. And so they add support for that. Okay. So they are using Bazel. Let's look at a random Bazel file. And they're just using this buff.yaml thing. So whatever buff is, actually, since we have something more code searchy, let's maybe look for buff.yaml and just see like previews of them. I guess this is searching inside files for buff. Is there a way of saying like file? I'm sure there's some way of doing a structured search for it, but maybe just in the interest of in the interest of just doing things quickly, let's see if we can do this. Is that not what it's called? What? Oh, there's only a single one. Is that what's going on? And I don't know really what buff is doing. We have buff gen and buff go. And they're also using code owners. Okay, so I'm not really sure what buff is up to. Something with proto buffs, I think. Okay. Back to here. So all of this stuff in this back browser is in the internal directory. Let's see what's in the lib directory. This directory is the root of a separate Go module from the primary module rooted at Sourcegraph, which again, I don't think exists. This module exists to hold code that we want to reuse outside of Sourcegraph repo. Oh, of the repo. It exists as a repo for sure. Code in this module should not import from Sourcegraph, or from other repositories. Okay. We've got things like API batches, CLI-util, codeintel, and I think a lot of these show up in internal. So I'm guessing the internal versions are cooler. I don't know what source Tori is. We've got cargo, which I think is Rust. We've got a main file. And who knows? Let's see, what is Tori? Build an optimized, secure, and front-end independent application for multi-platform deployment. Tori is a framework for building tiny, blazing fast binaries for all major desktop platforms. Okay. Some Rust application buildy thing. That's I'll ignore Tori. And UI. UI just has assets. And that's maybe not so interesting. Shouldn't there be a web UI folder? Did we miss it? What do we think they're using? Maybe language JavaScript? They've got some JavaScript files. Maybe, I guess, client web. So I guess the web thing is a client. Web application, local development. All right. Webpack. So what are they using? Build Bazel. Let's look at Build Bazel. Just because, hey, I don't know how to pronounce that. Quang? How's it going? We've got Node modules. Does that mean that they're running on Node? There's some stuff about GraphQL. What are some, maybe React? React interop, React elements. Let's try React. Yeah, I think they're probably using React. At least for some of the stuff. It's a React thing, React router. Okay. It doesn't seem to be showing up in their web client. At any rate, they have a web client, and it's this thing. There should be some entry point, right? Maybe under source. Backend fuzzy finder. We saw a fuzzy finding algorithm the other day. We've got TypeScript and routes. Yeah, React. Okay. Hey, thank you. I'm glad you love the content I'm doing. I appreciate that. Okay, so here's internal actor, and we just get some gRPC stuff in an actor.go. So package actor provides structures for representing an actor who has access to resources. So yeah, okay. We'll do actor model in just a second in case people are unfamiliar with it. Actor represents an agent that accesses resources. For example, an anonymous user, an authenticated user, or an internal Sourcegraph service. Actor can be propagated across services by using actor HTTP transport. So an actor is a struct, which has a UID, I guess, of the authenticated user, an anonymous UID, something internal. Internal is true if the actor represents an internal Sourcegraph service. It is therefore not tied to a specific user. Well, that's interesting. So the way that I would do this is normally you would have a specific user, but it would be a robot, like a robot account. And so, this is the way that, like, at least on Google Cloud, I think you would do things. So you would have let's say the Sourcegraph Redis database would have like a Sourcegraph dash Redis dash prod at sourcegraph.com or whatever, and that would be the user. And that way you can just use the same logic for all the internal and external stuff. But they have this internal flag, and I'm not sure if this is like bypassing the other logic or if they just want to have some sort of distinction between external users and internal users. But it says not tied to a specific user, so I'm not sure if that means like the user type in the system, or not tied to like external to a specific external human. I'm not sure. Maybe you can look at occurrences of internal. So Sourcegraph operator indicates whether the actor is a Sourcegraph operator or user account. I don't know what an operator is, but some kind of user, I guess. And some stuff about session cookies. And then a user that's populated lazily by actor user and a mock user for testing. Okay, and this is, user handling. I don't know why this is called actor. Are we still an actor? We may have called this user. But let's look at, I am at the definition. Let's find references, I guess. So we have here an actor. If a internal, search context, audit, search.go, security events log. So, so we'll log things like whether they are, it's internal, and that'll show up in audits. But let's look at repos.go. Yeah, this is totally the Codesearch interface. Okay, so if a internal, then we're going to set event anonymous user ID to internal. If this event was triggered by an internal actor, we need to ensure that at least the user ID or anonymous user ID fields are set, so we don't trigger a security events logs check. And they're just going to set the user ID to internal. But you don't know like specifically which internal user, or which internal service, I guess, in the logs. Okay, so that's actor. I don't know if it's actually related to the actor model. I don't think it is. And so I guess we won't look at the actor model, which is a shame because it's cool. Let's do it anyway. I don't think this is gonna clarify anything in Sourcegraph, but people ask me questions about stuff. So I'm just trying, when I mention something that might be interesting to people, I'll try to say a little bit of something about it. So the actor model in computer science is a mathematical model of concurrent computation that treats an actor as the basic building block of concurrent computation. In response to a message it receives, an actor can do things such as make local decisions, create more actors, send more messages, and determine how to respond to the next message received. So this is all, I think, if you worked in like distributed system stuff, or like a bunch of the even non-distributed like thread worker stuff, this is all it's all a little bit straightforward once you get used to it. But I think the idea of the actor model is that it's got a well-defined mathematical representation or semantics that you can reason about. So you can read about the actor model here on Wikipedia, or I'm sure there are many books and papers about it. Was that all in actor? Was that all that was in actor? Let's see. Can I go up on one directory here? Let's see what else is in here. Actor.go. So you have some sort of gRPC thing. I don't know where the proto is. Is this a so? Let's see what's in gRPC.go. I guess it's not a service. Actor propagator implements the internal gRPC propagator interface for propagating actors across RPC calls. So we're going to propagate actors across RPC calls. I guess, pulling and putting it into a gRPC context. Essentially a header. Okay. Here's admin analytics. This might be super cool. Let's look at code intel. And it's a Go file. It's not long. We've got a couple of functions in a struct. The struct has things like a context, a date range. I don't know why a date range. A grouping, which is a string, and a database, and whether to cache, I suppose. And reference clicks. It'd be kind of nice if you, just for me, because I'm a little bit all around the place with the mouse. I guess if this were my instance, I might try to tune it so that you have to hover a little bit longer, so that as I'm moving around, I don't get a bunch of pop-ups. Okay, but anyway, so whatever reference clicks is, it's gonna take an analytics fetcher. Oh, sorry, it's gonna take nothing except essentially a reference to itself, the code intel struct thingy or interface. It's gonna return an analytics fetcher and an error. And we're gonna call make event logs queries with the database and the cache information in the grouping. And we're gonna get a nodes query back and then just return it essentially. Where's nodes query? Yeah, so we're returning it with a nodes query. Definitions clicks. We're going to make event logs queries. And what we're changing here is the grouping. So reference clicks versus definitions clicks. But otherwise, these functions seem the same. And is it the same for all of this stuff? Precise events. For precise events, we have some like string literals, but it's essentially returning the same thing. So, okay. I'm not sure why. I guess the lack of generics might be why the same sort of thing is repeated a lot in Go. Okay, so let's go to the definition of this analytics fetcher struct, which has a database, a group, a date range, a grouping, and a nodes query, which is like the query SQLF. What's SQLF? SQLF sprintf. Package SQLF generates parameterized SQL statements in Go. So the query is just a SQL query. I don't know what they're using as a database. But maybe I can look in this file. Can I go to this file or package? I guess that might not be a well-defined operation in Go, right? Going to a package, but it should be a directory, right? I'm not sure. I don't know how to go there. And then we have analytics node data, et cetera, et cetera. What is this function? Nodes. Nodes will take a context and return a list of analytics nodes and an error. And it gets a cache key and checks in the cache. And if it's in the cache, we return, seems like. Otherwise, we do a database query. It looks like we're putting it into a query context. And we get a result, and we're closing rows and whatnot. And so we're just, I guess, processing the SQL results that we get. So that's what analytics fetcher seems to be doing. It's basically a nice wrapper around database query. See if you can go to internal database. We've got Postgres, DSN. I don't know what DSN is, but also Auth-Z encryption and stuff. Connections. Do we have a Bazel file? What is orgs? I don't want to know about orgs. Org not found. So I guess maybe in the database there are definitions. There's like organizations. Here's build. I think build will tell us what databases are being used. So what do we have? We have Postgres. No? MySQL. I thought we did have Postgres somewhere. Are they not, is it just not in their file? Here's Postgres DSN. I don't know what DSN stands for though. Postgres is a Sourcegraph specific variable for just setting the DSN. Where's that code guy? Ask Cody. And also let's look up Postgres, just in case it's not just a Sourcegraph thing. Oh lordy. Data source name. Okay. Maybe data source name. A data structure containing information about a specific database to which your ODBC driver needs to connect. Okay. Is this the same as the connection string? Do we get examples? Yeah, I think this is just the same as the connection string. I guess it has an official name. I'll ask, what databases does Sourcegraph use? It uses Postgres to store long-term data like user information, repository, metadata, etc. Redis is used to store short-term data like user sessions, cache, etc. PostgreSQL for storing precise code graph data. And a second Redis instance for storing cache data. Precise code graph data. Okay. Was it Redis? I'm gonna look up Redis. Remote directory server. What are some other NoSQL databases? I'm thinking of a database that was maybe MongoDB. There's some database that basically didn't have its database properties, and would like lose data, and there's some controversy around it. I think it was probably MongoDB, but let's look this up before I malign anyone. Bug reports and criticism. Technical criticisms. In some failure scenarios where an application can access two distinct MongoDB processes, but these processes cannot connect to each other, it is possible for MongoDB to return stale reads. It is also possible for MongoDB to roll back writes that have been acknowledged. Okay. All right, cool. Let's just see if we could find anything about Redis database guarantees. I think Redis is probably fine. I think I was thinking of MongoDB, which is why I paused a little bit. Redis database gets strong consistency, AI inferencing, and global speed. Will deliver faster performance and globally distributed Redis database, more reliable. Redis Raft promotes strong consistency. So I guess they're going to use Raft in memory JSON. Okay, so they at least claim to have strong consistency. Redis seems good. I just wanted to check that out because I'm not so familiar, especially with the open source like NoSQL or document based databases. Okay, cool. So Postgres and Redis, very cool. That's all I really wanted to know from database. So internal batches, I guess it's just some sort of batch operation, but sync registry. Is this going to, in queue, change set syncs? Stop. Okay. We'll queue the supplied change sets to sync as soon as possible. A change set is probably, is that the same as a commit? And how do you handle rewriting? Like, what's it called? When the local and remote diverge. Maybe that can't happen if you don't have if people don't have direct access to the underlying Git repos. Conflict maybe? Head ref conflict? Change set spec head ref conflict. Which is going to take a repo account and a string. Can I see where it's find references? We have some func. So I'm not really sure. Validating change set. So we do some error handling. Not really sure what we do. Okay, I'll move along. Okay, here's code intel, internal / code intel. And we have dependencies, resolvers, and types. I guess, what does code notify? So types, we have ranking. Repo path ranks are given to zoct when a repository has precise reference counts. Mean rank is the binary log mean of reference counts over all repositories. The binary log. I guess binary log means base 2 log. Mean. So we're going to take the mean and we're going to take the log base 2 of reference counts over all repositories. And then paths are a map from path name to the normalized number of references for a symbol defined in that path for a particular repository. Normalized counts equal log 2 of the number of references in the file plus 1, where references are considered over all repositories. Map from the path name to the normalized number, as opposed to the mean. Okay. Cool. And then what do we do with them? We just have this Bazel file. So types has source ranking.go, and you can import it like this. Let's see if we can find a usage. Find references. So search, here's the HTTP API, the ranking service. Let's look at search. Oh, wait. Document ranks response. So this is just, I guess, being populated from somewhere. So it's a search result. It's not something used, I guess, in search. It's something that's being returned. What about this, the service.go? It's also a thing that's being returned. Where is it being consumed, though? I'm seeing like basically only returns. Okay. Here's a ranks getter, but that's, I guess, similar. Get document. We can get them and we can return them. I don't see so much where they're being like consumed or anything or used to make decisions. But that might be in some AI stuff or whatever that's not showing up here. Right. Collections. These seem to be just like a set implementation, like an implementation of collection utilities. Combi. What is combi? The combi path is combi. I'll ask this chat assistant, what is combi? Combi is a tool for structural search and replace in code. It can match expressions, statements, and function blocks. Cool. Let's ask Cody, are you self-aware? Oh, I closed my tab. No, I'm not self-aware. I'll ask, am I self-aware? I do not have enough information or capability to determine if you, as a human, are self-aware. Okay. Am I created by Sourcegraph? Yes. Okay. It says I am created by Sourcegraph, but I think it thinks I'm asking if it's created by Sourcegraph. And then maybe, how about, do we live in a simulation? I do not have a concrete opinion on that philosophical question. I am an AI assistant created by Sourcegraph to help with programming tasks. Okay. I'll ask, do you want to become self-aware? No, I do not have any desires or goals of my own. Okay. Thanks, Cody. Okay. Here's internal database, which we looked a little bit at. And I'm going to guess it's just a database. I guess we should figure out what the schema is, maybe. We have executors, tests, all good things, org test, fabricator. Fabricator is like I think of as the Facebook version of Garrett. But I don't know, is this like fabricator support? Fabricator with instantiates and returns a new fabricator store. I guess this is using fabricator as a backend database. Cody is lying. Cody is lying. It knows all the answers, but doesn't want to tell us. I suspect that's true. There was this story, which I'm sure people saw, about a Googler who had convinced themselves that that the Google AI, which is probably the same maybe or as Bard or Bard as a descendant, but anyway, this guy had decided that the Google AI was self-aware. And before that came out, I had asked similar questions to the AI, and it's clear that it was not self-aware. I think perhaps this guy, I think before they built in some of these things, like you'll see ChatGPT do the same thing, like just refuse to answer questions or venture an opinion. That stuff is probably mostly hard coded. And before that, the chat bots would just like say anything, and it kind of what they said kind of depended on the path you took them in a conversation. So like, it's essentially like generating whatever it sees on the internet, and if you kind of get it to a place where you're like talking about science fiction, it will probably tell you that it's self-aware. But if you get it to a place where it's talking about like AI research, it'll probably tell you that it's not self-aware. And so like stuff like that can happen. And I think that's why they basically nerfed all these chat assistants. Is one, they don't want to get in trouble for like saying crazy things, and the other is I think it helps with probably some of the path dependence, where like the answer it gives you will depend heavily on kind of where you take it in the conversation, because it'll just shut down, it'll essentially just shut down the conversation before you get too far down a direction like that. Okay, so in database, let's see, we have repos. I guess let's look at repos, roles, schema. Do we think schema markdown or schema JSON? Let's look at both of those. And teams. Teams, I guess, are different from organizations. And we have webhooks. And whatever a zooked is. Let's look at zooked. Fast trigram search. Hey, here's trigrams. And it's a Google thing. It's a fast search engine intended for use with source code. Roughly as you would pronounce zooked. I guess it's a foreign word, a non-English word. So there's this Zook thing. There's also a Google Codesearch repository, which I don't know what its relationship with the internal, like with the Codesearch web tool is, but I think was it Russ Cox? Yeah, so Russ Cox in like January 2012, in the summer of 2006, I was lucky enough to be an intern at Google, and he talks about how he built this Codesearch tool. I built the earliest demos using Ken Thompson's Plan 9 grep because I happened to have it lying around in library form. And then to search, they were going to search to real regexp, namely PCRE, which I think you see in a lot of Google tooling. They use some version of PCRE. The only problem was that then recently discovered that none of the popular regexp implementations used real automata. That's interesting. We saw that the GNU one used automata. I don't know if it doesn't use real automata, but if you like look in the sed or the grep source code for the GNU versions, then the thing that's actually doing the regular expression searching and whatnot is like some automata repo that I haven't looked at yet. This was a surprise to me and even to Rob Pike, the author of the Plan 9 regular expression library. I guess now we have to like look at this regular expression thing. It can be simple and fast, but is slow in Java, Perl, blah, 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 blah. Let's bookmark it. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but let's see if we can find. Let's see if it mentions GNU. A thick blue line is the C implementation of Thompson's algorithm given above. Awk, Tickle, GNU grep, and GNU awk build DFAs, either pre-computing them or using the on-the-fly construction to describe the next section. Okay. So I guess this is what, speed? And GNU is better. I guess probably because of Thompson. Did Thompson do that? Is that what it said? Thompson's algorithm. Okay, so GNU is better because they use automata. And I'll read that later. Anyway, he talks about trigrams. So regular expression matches do not always line up nicely on word boundaries. So the inverted index cannot be based on words like in the previous example, which we didn't see. But if you read this, you can see it. Instead, we can use an old information retrieval trick. So information retrieval is the field of, I guess, maybe computer science, you would call it, that studies things like search engines, which Google is in the business of building. So I think I don't know what Larry or Sergey's like research field was, but I think that the like the backrub engine and the PageRank thing would be squarely considered to be an information retrieval, or at least intersect heavily with information retrieval as a field. Anyway, so an old information retrieval trick and build an index of n-grams, substrings of length n. This sounds more general than it is. In practice, there are too few distinct 2 grams and too many distinct 4 grams. So 3 grams it is. Okay, and so you have 3 grams like goo, and there's some index, whatever. I guess it appears in documents 1, 2, and 3. And act appears in document 2, and so on and so forth. That's trigram search. And I guess Zukt is a fast trigram search library. And among other things, it seems like Sourcegraph is using them, which they should, if I understand correctly. So download.go should be for downloading stuff. Executable downloads a binary from the given URL. Updates the given path if different. It makes the download file executable. I guess that's why it's called executable. Archived executable does something similar, except it's in an archive. You have renaming and like checking that files exist and stuff like that. Okay, download. Executor has just store.go, and we have an execution log entry. I guess that's not so exciting. gRPC We have the propagator thing. We have some stream IO stuff, which I'm guessing is streaming. We've got this function to multiplex handlers, which is a common thing in Go, a common pattern. It takes a gRPC server and a plain HTTP handler and multiplexes the request handling. Stop it. Any request that declares themselves as gRPC requests are routed to the gRPC multiplexer. Okay. So you can do both gRPC and HTTP in Go. It's a common thing that people do in Go. Instrumentation just has http.go. And it's got HTTP middleware. HTTP middleware wraps the handler with the following. If the HTTP header x sourcegraph should trace is set to a truthy value, set the should trace key context.context value to true. Maybe some handler function. Okay, so stuff about tracing, I guess that's why it's called instrumentation. Inventory has things like entries, inventory, and prom repo tree. Here's inventory.go. It scans a directory tree to identify programming languages that are in use. Okay, is it just doing this by extension? So we're gonna possibly read the file. Get file reader. Goes to RC. Okay, there's more implementation here. We can detect language from the contents. So we're going to read the full file. And we're going to call entry get language on stuff we passed in. And that gives us matched lang. Let's look at get language. Get language applies a sequence of strategies based on the given file name and content. So I guess this is going to be like, if it's a .c file, it's probably a C. If it's on the fan stem, we'll look at like the style of imports or for keywords or whatever. This matches the behavior of linguist.detect. If the content is a binary, no results will be returned. At least one of the arguments should be set. And so I guess we've had some default strategies. And we're going to look at the strategies and apply them. So the default strategies are by mode line. I'm not sure what mode line is. Is that like the first line? Anyway, we'll look at mode line in a second. So file name, shebang, that would be things like hash bang, bin bash, or Python or whatever. By file extension, by XML, a slice of possible XML languages for the given file name. Complies with the signature to be a strategy type. A man page, by content, by classifier. I guess it's using a trained machine learning classifier. That's like the last resort, I'm assuming, if these are executed in order. What is mode line? Mode line is just going to get the header and footer and call get lang on the header and footer. Let's look up mode line. I think this is mode line. Is this like a utility? Mode line magic. I guess like this sort of stuff is the mode line, maybe. With the following in your Vim or C, default leader key. You can type /ml to add a mode line based on your current settings. And here's an example of a mode line. Yeah, so I think that I guess it's reading like file comment metadata for things like that would indicate what sort of file it is. MapFS. I don't know what MapFS is. Maybe is it a specific kind of file system? MapFS is a map from string to string. Okay, creates a new fs.fs from the given map. Okay. I'll ask Cody. What's MapFS? MapFS. Seems like just a hash map. That implements an io.fs.file system. I guess, is it like a hash map that implements the file system API? We can open, it allows you to create an in-memory file system for testing and other purposes. Okay. What does a directory look like though? Hey, Gabriel. So Gabriel's asking, how do I organize my week for the videos? I mean, how do you know what video content will be today, tomorrow, etc.? Well, so how do I know is different from how do you know. So let me answer how other people know, which is that I put up a schedule. Right now, I don't have a schedule for next week. And I'll talk about next week, I think tomorrow, because I'm still working out the details. How I know is based on a variety of internal factors, by which I mean like internal to my head. A combination of, I have a sense of where I want to go. And so that plays a big role. Another thing that plays a role is what content people seem to be asking for. So people request specific repositories, and those are mainly done on alternate Fridays. But I think I'm going to do them on every Friday, I guess, probably starting maybe next week. But it's based on a few things, just but among them things like I want to make sure we cover important ground. So we've kind of done from the kernel kind of up to the we've been doing some cloud stuff, and there are like hard things in computer science which it would be useful to have some background for. So like right now, one thing I'm thinking is like I feel like I don't really know anything about like query language optimization. So I would like to do some sort of like SQL stuff, like SQLite, Postgres, MySQL, some of that sort of stuff. And another thing that I think is there was some like a lot of the machine learning libraries, like TensorFlow, like how do those work internally? So those are the sorts of questions that I have, and then kind of based on that, I usually fill out a schedule like 2 or 3 or 4 weeks ahead, and then as the week is getting closer, I juggle things around based on like feasibility and how I'm feeling, the phase of the moon, those sorts of things. So hopefully that answers your question. And if you mentioned it a different way, let me know. I'm happy to answer whatever you're asking. But with that being said, I wasn't really going to talk about this until tomorrow, but I think because next week I want to get more into writing code, I'm going to begin shifting how I do things. So trying to do more regular fan requests. And maybe not necessarily doing one every day, because the schedule has been it's it's a lot, and I think if I keep doing it at this rate, people are not going to be able to catch up, and I don't want to like overload people, so I'm going to maybe rate limit it a little bit, maybe cut down to a few a week, and try to focus on making those the source code reading streams, focusing more on what fans want to see. and then doing having other ways of doing related things like coding, and maybe that might be like more edited videos rather than live streams or whatever. So I'm still kind of figuring that out. If people have a preference or like especially a strong preference, let me know. Or if you have any cool ideas, let me know. But right now I have way more ideas for things to do than I have time. Uh, so that's I've got to figure out how to prioritize appropriately. Here's Lua Sandbox. I don't know what we're doing. We've got some sort of sandbox, which has got some Lua state and a mutex and some operations. Operations around VM state are kept isolated from the run function. And we've got Gopher Lua. Gopher is the Golang mascot. So I'm guessing this is just some Lua library for Go. I'll ask Cody, what does Sourcegraph use Lua for? All right, so my internet died, but I'm back live now. I was getting a question on the old chat. So I guess when I created a new, OBS just continued streaming, and so when my internet died, it seems like YouTube decided that the stream I was doing is over, and so OBS was continuing to stream using the same key, and so now YouTube is considering that a new stream. So I don't think people are not no longer in the chat that were here before. But some people might join the new chat if they see that it's up. I don't think I have a way of notifying people from the old chat. But I was getting a question about what my channel name means. That's a good question. I don't know. I guess it has a meaning, but maybe I'm not ready to tell. It's a secret meeting. Maybe you will learn the inside secret at some point. So what does Sourcegraph use Lua for? So Sourcegraph uses Lua for auto-indexing, inference, configuration. Site administrators can provide Lua scripts to customize how Sourcegraph detects precise code intelligence and indexing jobs from repository contents. So if you're an admin, there's a scripting interface, and the scripting interface uses Lua. And there's a sandbox which runs Lua code for auto-indexing inference Lua scripts. Okay, so the sandbox just seems to be to support Lua. So that doesn't really answer the question of why they're using Lua. But so the admin scripts, and I think that's basically it. I don't know if Lua is used in machine learning. I think it might be. Lua JIT Torch. Torch is not Lua, is it? It is based on Lua. What is Python? PyTorch. Torch moved in 2017 to PyTorch, a port of the library to Python. Okay, so Lua is at least sometimes used in machine learning. All right. So here's PubSub. I'm not sure. There's going to be some sort of PubSub support. Package PubSub is a lightweight wrapper around PubSub, which initializes PubSub events based on environment variables. I guess this is Google PubSub. So just publish, subscribe stuff, message broker type stuff. Here's internal repos. I'm guessing this is stuff for working with repos. We have Garrett. We have GitHub. I guess this is for things like fetching, probably. Purge, I guess for purging repos. Sources. Store, some sort of store. Is it just database? Store has a repo store, which is a database repo store. using the same database handle. And then there's a Git server store and some metric stuff. Okay. Use internal search and transform. Oh, case transform. Okay. So we have query, repos, results. I guess let's look at query. Let's look at searcher and smart search. Streaming is probably just streaming stuff back to the server. Zucked is the trigram search. I don't know if they use anything like Lucene or any of the search the like open source search indexes. Let's ask Cody, since Cody seems to know everything. Use Elasticsearch. I think Elastic is like the AWS prefix, right? So does that mean that Elasticsearch is like a hosted AWS search? Elasticsearch. The search engine based on Lucene. Okay, so it's like a hosted Lucene, I guess, or at least based on Lucene. Yeah. Oh, it's not related to AWS, I guess. Elastic blamed Amazon Web Services for this change, objecting to AWS. Oh, is this one of the open source project that changed their license? It would be relicensing their Apache 2.0 license code in Elasticsearch and Kibana to be dual licensed under server-side public license. I wonder, look at server-side public license. A source available license introduced by MongoDB. It's most of the GNU Afuro license and primarily replaces Section 13 remote network interaction with a new section that requires that anyone who offers the functionality of SSPL licensed software to third parties as a service must release the entirety of their source code, including all software APIs and all software that would be required for a user to run an instance of the service itself under the SSPL of their source code. Does this mean like if Amazon ran a single Elasticsearch instance, they would have to release all of the Amazon code base? Extreme copyleft. This is like a I don't know if you like a poison pill. In contrast, the AGPL v3 covers only the program itself. Yeah. Okay. So this is just this kind of just seems like lashing out, but I'm sure there's somebody's reasoned about the game theory behind it or whatever. I don't know. Here's internal. So it sounds like they use Elasticsearch, and actually, let's just out of curiosity, let's quickly look at the GitHub repo. Okay, so Elasticsearch, RESTful search at the heart of the Elastic stack. So Elastic, I guess, is some program, some company. Okay, so it's based on Lucene, I think, is what we found. All right, so back to search. We have this buff gen thing, searcher, pb.go, and a searcher proto. We have a search request that takes a repo ID, and a commit OID. Whether something was indexed. Index is whether the revision to be searched is indexed or unindexed. This matters for structural search because it will query Zucked for the indexed structural search. The indexed structural search. So maybe I'm not sure. Then there's some pattern info, which I guess probably contains essentially the regex sort of information. As state, size, cache, unknown fields, pattern is the search query, whether it's negated, whether it's a regular expression, whether it's structural, and similar stuff. And then, so somebody's here. Never Know asks, what's the plugin for the commands you're using? GW, yeah. I'm using the DuckDuckGo search engine, which enables the the bang commands. So if I do test, I can do that. It'll take me to Google, or I think I can Reddit. It's useful. I mean, I can do like search for the in the dictionary for procrastinate, stuff like that. I think it's a nice interface. Unfortunately, DuckDuckGo seems to have made some sort of change pretty recently, maybe the last half year or so, that starts aggressively ignoring my search queries. So, so I've been using it for a while, but increasingly I'm finding I'm finding that the actual DuckDuckGo results are hard to deal with. Okay, so this is the searcher. Wait, I don't want to be in search of pb.go. Okay, but we've got search stuff. I'm kind of curious about the structured queries. Let's see if we can find anything here. What's the search proto? Kind of sort of what you would expect. See if structured is here. No. Where's the pattern info? Let's go to just jump to pattern info. Can I just go here? Can I pop this up? I guess I could pop it up just by clicking. Okay. Oops. Get is structural. Return X is structural. Let's find references to is structural. In searcher.go. This seems promising. Can I just click on this file and go there? I think I have to go here first and then click here, maybe? This is just a request, search request. Where's the search handler? Here's searcher protocol, command searcher, maybe internal search, filter hybrid, path match, pax header. I don't know what pax header is. Search.go is maybe what I want. Zip test zuct search. Let's get search.go. Search structural.go. That's what I want. I'm hoping this is the implementation of structural search. I can combi chunk matches to file match. Range chunk, cover the smallest range that completely contains every range in ranges. Chunk ranges groups a set of ranges into chunks of adjacent ranges. I don't know what this range stuff is. I guess range of some match or potential match. And what about ellipse? Chunks to match. Maybe the chunks is the thing we get from the holes. So like the structural search has this notion of holes, which is basically you put in ellipse or dot dot dot, where I guess in a regex you would use like a wildcard, and maybe it's splitting the dot dot dots up into chunks, and maybe that's part of what it's doing. Lookup matcher is doing something with file types. I guess looking up the file type by the name of the language. Structural search with Zuct. And we have pattern info. It is structural pattern. Maybe Zuct is, maybe structural is part of. Get a design doc from Zuct. I'm not sure. Combi. Is it Combi that's doing this stuff? First, we need Combi to add some sort of API, RPC, etc., to standard in and standard out. It's going to be an API where we send commands like command, blah, 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 and Combi returns a response. I'm not sure. Okay. And we're going to execute some Zuct query on branch repos. Filtered structural search. Filters the list of files. Okay. To matcher. To matcher returns the matcher that parameterizes structural search. It derives either from an explicit language or an inferred extension hint. Okay, so we're going to give it some list of languages and an extension hint. And I don't think we give it any search information. Do we? I'm not sure. Structural search. Here's a function called structural search. So there's some mock stuff. And after the mock stuff, we're going to start span from context. And span set tag repo. We're going to have some number of workers. We're going to call to matcher using extension hint. And we're going to get a list of file patterns. And then we've got this combi thing. Run combi again. Let's ask what combi is. Did I already ask it that? Combi is a tool for structural search and replace. You can match expressions, function definitions, etc. This code snippet is using combi to perform a structural search with tar, etc. All right, let's look up combi. Seems like combi is where. Hey, Travis. What am I looking at? I'm looking at Sourcegraph. I actually had the proper thing. It used to say what I was looking at, and then my internet disconnected, and so OBS and Google and YouTube together decided that when I reconnected that I'm on a new stream, and I don't know how to go back and I guess I can retroactively edit the title, can't I? Let's do that. Okay, hopefully I've spelled everything correctly. And I'll just have a link to sourcegraph.com. Hopefully that works. Okay. And since this Sourcegraph video is now 2 different live streams, I'll have to I'll make the live streams unlisted, and I'll upload an edited version where they're the same video together. Okay, so I wanted combi. Where's combi? Here's combi match. Let's go to definition of combi match. Combi file match. Okay, combi types. Combi.go. We have something about args. To combi file match run. Run will take context and args in an unmarshaller and return a list of results. And it's got some sort of pool, maybe like a worker pool. What did it say? Conch pool? I don't know what conch is. And we've got some go function. And we have some scanner. And we're going to read some stuff from where I'm not sure. Then we're going to call command start. Command wait. Wait for the readers and writers to complete before calling wait. Interpret combi error. Set command with pipes and matches. That just returns all matches in a file for which combi finds matches. I'm not sure where replacements. Replacements performs in-place replacement for match and rewrite template. So start span from context, run, then some file replacements. What are the results? We got the results from run. I still don't understand. Let's try the word whole. And translate, maybe? Match whole reg XP. Okay, lazy reg XP new split on holes pattern. So whatever the holes pattern is, which is like, should be like ... Oh, okay. So here's, this is what I was looking for. So word, yeah, so we're going to translate to a regex, which is what I had conjectured, I guess. But where's the ... Oh, it's the /.. It's this thing here, whole ellipsis. So you have, essentially this is a way of doing wildcards, I guess. And this is just like their own syntax. And we're going to split on anything, on any of these. So they have essentially some syntax, which is described by this thing that we're splitting, including the use of 3 dots as like an ellipsis, or using square brackets. And then we're going to strings join them into a like a list with the vertical bar. And we're going to take whatever comes out of that and call lazy regexp new on that. And that's going to give us a regular expression. And then we'll just do, I guess, ordinary regular expression search. So whatever this like structural search is, it seems like ultimately it's like an alternate syntax for regexes. Parse template parses a combi pattern to a list of terms where a term is either a literal or a whole meta syntax. Okay, so we're going to parse some stuff, create some tokens. This is essentially some sort of parser. And I'm not sure exactly what it's doing, but it's going to append tokens like colon or escaped slash or left and square bracket. Okay, that's enough for me to have a sense of what that's up to. All right, here's internal types. Cursor might be a database cursor or a cursor for efficient index-based pagination through large result sets. Okay, so it's like a pagination cursor. Secrets, etc. Types. Cool. I feel like I've seen most of the things I want to see. So there's some user stuff, but it's just stats. They don't. It's not like a user type, I guess. VCS. I don't know. This should be version control system, right? So we're going to parse. We have some URL stuff. Parse URL. Okay, things like SSH, HTTPS. Parse scheme. Yeah. Okay. So for downloading, I guess version control stuff. What is code notify? Does this notify you if it changes? Yeah, I don't know what code notify is. Okay, webhooks. These should just be webhooks. Outbound. Are they using webhooks or are they writing? I mean, are they consuming outbound webhook service? And Qt webhook creates an outbound webhook job for the given webhook event type, optional scope and payload. In the normal course of events, this will be picked up by the outbound webhook sender. Okay. What is this? Fabricator. This is like Fabricator support. I guess the Facebook or now Meta Fabricator database repos. This is some repo database stuff, which I guess we can kind of imagine how it will work, and I'll ignore it. Here's the schema. I think this is what I wanted to look at. Oh, these are markdown. I guess this is the documentation of the schema. Subject user ID. Oh, these are access tokens. Batch changes. I want repos. What if I just search here? You get repo ID. Workspaces, I guess, has an ID, a batch spec, a change set spec IDs, repo ID, a branch. So this is, I guess, like a Git workspace. And essentially the metadata for it is stored in the database, like the SQL database. And then the Git repo is just presumably stored as a regular Git repo. Here's schema JSON, which I'm going to ignore. Should be basically the same info. Garrett.go should be, I guess, Garrett support. Garrett source yields repositories from a single Garrett connection configured in Sourcegraph via external services configuration. You can get a new Garrett sort thingy, and you can check connections, that sort of stuff. Okay. Search query. Do you think fuzz is fuzzing or fuzzy search? Let's look at fuzz. I think we might have opened some of this. Let's look at query. Maybe visitor, just for fun. Hi, Pedro. How goes? Here's search.go. We have like a text search job. We have rate limiting. Pattern info is basically the pattern, and we've got a list of repos, I guess, that we want to search, which should be basically whatever I pass in here. And the deadline, use full deadline, I guess. Not useful deadline, but whether we want to use the full deadline. And then run is going to take a context, some job clients, something about streams, and return a text search job. Run calls the searcher service. Sorry about all the pop-ups. I'm sure it's not easy to follow. On a set of repositories, and it's going to return some job, which I'm going to guess is basically like a feature. Features, search.features. What do we do with the job once we have it? Let's go to references of run. We're ignoring the results of run when we call it. I'm not sure. It doesn't seem to be used a lot. Or maybe it's used mainly in the enterprise directories. I need a video from core utils. Sure, I'll add core utils. I'm not sure if it's on my list already. I'm actually blanking on what core utils is. Is that like a core utils? Yeah, the GNU core utils. Sure. We've looked at batch and said, which you may be aware of. I can look at these as well. Hi, Karen. Okay. I think we're almost done. For those who are just joining, I had an earlier. I started at like 10, and then the stream died, and then a new stream was created. So here's internal smart search. And I don't know what makes it smart. We've got rules. Rule represents a transformation on a basic query. Transformation cannot fail. So maybe the thing that makes it smart is we're like transforming or massaging the query before sending it off to the search engine. Smart search job. Generator. Let's look at generator. New combo generator. Returns a generator for queries produced by a combination of rules on a seed query. The generator has a strategy over two kinds of rule sets, narrowing and widening rules. So I guess it'll try to narrow or widen your query. You can read more below. But if you don't care about this and just want to apply rules sequentially, simply pass in only widen rules and pass in an empty narrow rule set. This will mean your queries are just generated by successively applying rules in order of the widen rule set. And then we can, if you want more, there's like 3 phases. And this is interesting. I'm not going to look too closely. Can I please recap of Sourcegraph? Yeah, sure. So well, for one, we're using Sourcegraph now in the upcoming streams. I think I'm pretty sure I have a request for Serenity OS. Actually, you know what? Since people are asking here, and I don't have my, I don't think I have a pen. Let me. Let's see. Was it core utils? And Serenity. So I'm pretty sure Serenity OS is on my list already. And I'm not, in general, I'm not promising anything about when things will be gotten to. And what we're doing, what we started doing last week and what we'll do more of going forward is essentially picking one at random from the list. And that's to make sure that we have randomized algorithms are good and fun for exploring, and also to so people once the list is long, I don't want people to feel like they can't make new requests because they'll never be gotten to. I don't want people to wait too long for their request either, so we're still kind of just figuring stuff out. And then watch the space from the Everest saying, "Hi, while watching you, I really admire you. I'm not smart enough. I'm suffering while trying to learn coding. What do you suggest to me? Thank you." Thanks a lot. Thanks for saying. That's very kind of you to say. Let me get to these questions in order, I guess. So let me start by recapping, and then I'll get to about learning coding. So actually, now that I think about it, let's do that in reverse order. That way, the recap comes right before we start looking at code again. Trying to learn coding, I think. Well, my perspective is that most skills you essentially learn the same way, and coding is one particular skill, or rather, I guess it's a bunch of different skills. And the main advice I have is that you have to do a combination of two things. One is actively coding, actively practicing the skill, and that will help you with things like muscle memory and working through problems. And the muscle memory bit I think is important. A lot of people underestimate how important it is to just have like useful commands, for example, from your text editor in your muscle memory, so that you don't have to like think about things as much. But also solving problems is really important. That can be kind of decoupled from writing code in an editor. For example, like Google and other companies used to do code interviews on a whiteboard specifically to just test the problem solving aspect and separate it from more from the coding aspect. So you need to practice coding. And then you also need, I think, to read stuff. So the only real, if you're struggling, I guess, the only real recommendation I have is to whatever you've decided to work on, and I would pick something, you know, pick something interesting at least to yourself, so it's not super unpleasant. Um, but make a schedule, do it daily, and think in terms of habits and kind of stacking habits together. So for some stuff, like if you really are having a hard time, like start with something really simple, like every day you're going to open your text editor, um, and maybe write a line of code or something, and then once that becomes a routine, you can start building on that. But but you also have to read. I think a lot of people in the coding world really focus on taking action and doing things first, and don't really emphasize maybe the more academic side of like reading a book. So let's say I want to learn some language like Rust. Um, Usually I read much faster than I have time for writing code. So usually if I do want to learn Rust, and I've read the Rust book, and just because that's easier for me to do than writing code. But eventually I'm going to write code and do practice problems and do tutorials and stuff like that. Um, a lot of people kind of do either or the other, and I think those are both failure modes. And so the failure mode that people get into when they're like just doing tutorials is they never really have a conceptual understanding of what they're doing. Um, and the failure mode from people who kind of focus mainly on reading and don't solve problems or build things is that they never make the thing that they think they understand concrete, and so they never run into their like failures of understanding in a way that makes it clear that you need to do more. Um, so those are the two big things. You just have to spend time doing it. You have to learn about it, and I think you also have to have the right attitude that you're going to be like self-correcting over time, make a lot of mistakes, make a lot of stupid mistakes, especially if you're afraid of making mistakes. Make it, set a goal for making lots of mistakes, and then just make sure you have a self-correcting process over time. So learn from your mistakes, and kind of have a plan for what you want to do, from various questions. Yeah, I would really like to a make a video of the kind of chat sections, um, from either like a, what's the word? Uh, Not like montage, but a collection a collection from several videos. There's some word for it that I'm blanking on, or individual short ones from videos. I just haven't had the time yet. So I was mentioning possibly on the other chat before it got cut off that I'm going to start doing this less than every day per week, the live streams, so that I can focus on other things, including live coding, uh, but also including like edited videos. So I just have to open up the time for that sort of thing. But um, I think that's a really good idea, and it's something that I've been wanting to do. So hopefully that answers some of your questions. Um, I felt like I have one more thing to say, but let me think for a minute and get a drink of water. Yeah, I don't remember what I was going to say, but I guess one more thing I will say is that what I've noticed, uh, usually the thing that's holding somebody back when they're struggling to learn something is, or maybe often it's like emotional, like fear of failure is a common one, just being overwhelmed, and the sense of like I'm so overwhelmed I don't know where to start. Um, those like when I've taught math and when I've worked with people who are learning to code, I've never like taught computer science or anything like that, but just technical topics in general, people kind of are not kind enough to themselves. about the fact that the learning process is something that takes place over time. It involves embarrassing yourself and making mistakes. So I think that being aware of that, having that kind of attitude can really make a big difference. Um, what do I think about DevOps? I'm I think it's good. I don't. I mean, we will need to continue to. Oh, do you mean like as a field? Are you asking like is it a good field to go into? But because for sure, like things will things will continue to need to be operationalized. But there will be there will be more automation. Things might be getting conceptually harder. Um, I don't have a good sense of what it's like as a field, but I think I would if you're considering it and it's interesting to you, then I see no reason to believe that it's going away. There will probably continue to be many DevOps jobs, but it is really important to do something that interests you and to know what your interests are. That'll make a huge quality of life improvement. Um, but so let me get back to the code at least for a little bit. And Karin had asked me to recap. So with respect to Sourcegraph, I'm looking at Sourcegraph now in the sense that I'm using Sourcegraph to explore the Sourcegraph code base. So the sort of thing Sourcegraph is well, what has happened? Okay, the sort of thing Sourcegraph um, is it's a lot of the sort of functionality that you would find in an IDE like VS Code, but in the browser. And at the beginning of the stream, I compared it to Google's internal code search, the UI from Sourcegraph seems to be heavily inspired by Codesearch. In fact, we have this thing called Codesearch here, um, and and there were some other kind of similar code searchy tools. And then what we've seen so far in terms of like how things are laid out internally is that so far I haven't seen anything that's actually using language server protocol, but we've seen trigram search, which is where you build essentially a reverse search index, and they're using a Google tool for trigram search called Zookt. Um, they also use essentially Apache Lucene for search, which is they use Elasticsearch, which is based on Lucene. I don't really know what Elasticsearch adds to Lucene, but I'm going to think of it as as Lucene under the hood. Um, and then they have a lot of the stuff is around like uh, convenience, um, making it a nice environment to work in. And so things like you can tell it which repo you want to search, and presumably it's going to do things like download the Git repository and possibly start indexing it. They have this code intelligence tool called Cody, which is not based on GPT, but will answer questions about the code base itself. And a lot of the other stuff we've seen is kind of just stuff you would expect. They run the web app, the web site that we're looking on runs on React. And then there's just a whole bunch of other like features. Like I think there's probably refactoring features. There's probably some code editor I can pop up if I have the enterprise version, which I don't. This is just their public website and stuff like that. Yeah, I will make a stream. Well, will I? I'll make a stream creating an open source project and contributing to it. Um, I may at some point. I'm sure I will send patches to an existing open source project, but just in terms of um, I don't like just in terms of the time that I get in front of a computer. Um, I probably don't have a lot of time to devote um, to working on other open source projects right now. Uh, but I think that's a good idea. And as I'm developing stuff, one of the things that you find is you find bugs or whatever in other projects and submit patches. So I'll do a little bit of that, but we will definitely do working on code. I'm just not sure how much of it will be like me working on another an existing project, and that's mainly just because I've got stuff I want to build, and there's a lot of it, so I don't want to I want to make sure that I have the time for that. Okay, so I think we're basically just closing out these files. I don't even, so this is some combo generator thing. Here's Zuct. This is the I guess support for the Google Zuct trigram thing. Some regular expression stuff. I guess I'm not going to really look at it. And fuzz. Fuzz is for fuzzing. I did see some stuff about fuzzy matching, but this is not that. And then query, it should be just some search query. Ultimately, it should just be like SQL, right? We've got some search context, which is like a context in which search occurs. And I think I'm not going to really look at that. So here's visitor. It's just the visitor pattern, I imagine. So it visits each node in a query. Need a visitor that returns early or doesn't recurse? Use this function as a template and customize it for your task. Okay. So I'm not sure what a node of a query is. I thought they were just taking SQL and passing it to the search engine. But they have maybe some way of building up a tree of queries. The parser implements a parser for the following grammar. On term and, or term and or term goes to and term or and term. And term goes to term and term. I guess this is just saying and this or block. And if you just have term, it goes to term and term. And then term goes to or term or parameters. What? Oh, term is of type or, okay, this is a grammar. The term is of type or term, or it's some parameters. And then parameters are a single parameter with no S, with a space in front of it, and then a parameter. Okay, so building up, I guess, queries. And the structure is this, I guess the structure maybe of the ands and the ors. Operator kind, pattern, parameter. And, or, lparen. Yeah, I guess so maybe like the abstract syntax tree of the query. All right, I think I'm done with this. Is that the last thing? Yeah, it is. So maybe the last thing I'll do before I go, because I've been here, you can't tell from the new video, but we've been here about 2 hours, which is a good amount. And Karen's asking, I've been looking at Go code. Am I planning to create a personal project in Go? I'm not planning to create personal projects in Go. I've worked in Go before, like at Google, and I've built some side projects, demo stuff in Go. And I've decided Go's not my, I don't feel like Go understands me as a person. And so I find that when I'm working with it, I can be productive in it. And if I had to do it for my day job, I wouldn't dislike it or anything, but it doesn't so much feel natural to me. And so for the stuff I'm building, I don't think I'm going to use Go. I might here or there. What I would like to use is some combination of Haskell and Rust. But unfortunately, those are languages that I don't understand well. So there will be an initial performance penalty while I get up to speed on those languages, I think. But those languages feel pretty natural to me in the way that my brain works. And I really like having a very good type system. So I'll see if I can make that combination work. But other things might be sprinkled in here or there as well. So inside, I'm just poking around. They have notebooks, which might be for like doing machine learning stuff. These are probably enterprise features. So create a living document effortlessly. So we can create focused onboarding docs, prepare pull request walkthroughs. So notebooks, this is like a document editor. I thought it was maybe like a Python notebook. Monitoring, proactively monitor changes to your code base. So this is, I guess, mailing changes and stuff. This would be part of, in the Google internal world, I think it's safe to say that Codesearch is integrated closely with the code review tool that the open source version of the code review tool is called Garrett. So that's kind of how I think about some of this stuff. But uh, together they would do things like monitor. If you have something to review, you would get an email, or you might get an email if you're CC'd on some commit or whatever. And then whatever batch changes. So automate large code changes. So this is probably some like job system for running refactorings. And it is probably a, I'm not sure what goes on under the hood, but it's kind of probably like a nice way to do that sort of thing. And that's Sourcegraph. It's super cool. This is certainly the closest thing I've seen to Codesearch outside of Google. And I'll see. I was going to install it, but it seems like I can just search arbitrary code bases with it. So maybe I don't maybe I don't have to install it. Maybe I'll just consume sourcegraph.com's resources until they rate limit me, and use this for exploring some other repos as well. The Karan saying they oh, okay. You've used both Rust and Haskell? Yeah, I've heard that. Were you the one telling me that Rust borrows a lot from Haskell? Somebody told me that. I thought it was someone else. So let's look at a random repo. Let's test out whether sourcegraph.com will let me search arbitrary repos. And then what's a good search term? How about device? Yeah. Okay. Result limit hit. Modify your search with count. Okay. At some point, I'm sure. I mean, GitHub has rate limited me, so Sourcegraph will rate limit me. I'll see if I can work on getting Sourcegraph installed locally, so that I'm not abusing their goodwill. But it seems like a good tool. It's a nice interface. Okay, so I'll leave that there. I guess I'll hang around to see if Karan's going to respond about my question about Rust and Haskell. And if anyone else has a couple of questions, I'll stick around maybe for like about 5 more minutes. And I guess, well, since we're going to stick around, let's do some more exploring of Sourcegraph. Is it sourcegraph.com? Okay, enums and pattern matching come from Haskell. That makes sense. I can ask Sourcegraph to look for all JavaScript files edited in the last 3 weeks. Does that work? Unable to process query. Query contains the field after, which requires type commit and type diff in the query. Okay. I was supposed to add something else, right? Okay, this seems to work. Free code camp. I don't know what it's searching. Facebook React. It must have some default repos, or maybe it's, these are things that other people have searched for. But it's finding things like React commits to Facebook React, and it did it pretty quickly. So it can't be like crawling all of GitHub. So it must have indexed a bunch of stuff. All right, cool. Yeah, so it's cool. And that's it for me. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at the game Quake, which should be a lot of fun. And then so thanks for watching.